At Paris, just after dark one gusty evening in the autumn of 1818, I was enjoying the twofold luxury of meditation and a meerschaum, in company with my friend C. Auguste Dupin, in his little back library, or book closet, number 33, Rue Dunot. For 1 hour at least, we had maintained a profound silence. I was mentally discussing certain topics which had formed matter for conversation between us at an earlier period of the evening. I mean the affair of the Rue Morgue, and the mystery attending the murder of Marie Roget. I looked upon it, therefore, as something of a coincidence when the door of our apartment was thrown open and admitted our old acquaintance, Monsieur G., the Prefect of the Parisian police. We gave him a hearty welcome. We had been sitting in the dark, and Dupin now arose for the purpose of lighting a lamp, but sat down again, without doing so, upon G saying that he had called to consult us about some official business, which had occasioned a great deal of trouble.
If it is any point requiring reflection, we shall examine it to better purpose in the dark. That is another of your odd notions,
said the Prefect, who had a fashion of calling everything odd that was beyond his comprehension. Very true, said Dupin, as he supplied his visitor with a pipe and rolled towards him a comfortable chair. And what is the difficulty now? Nothing more in the assassination way, I hope?
Oh, no, nothing of that nature. The fact is, the business is very simple indeed, and I make no doubt that we can manage it sufficiently well ourselves. But then I thought Dupin would like to hear the details of it, because it is so excessively odd.
Simple and odd.
Why, yes. And not exactly that either. The fact is, we have all been a good deal puzzled, because the affair is so simple, and yet baffles us altogether.
Perhaps it is the very simplicity of the thing which puts you at fault.
Oh, what nonsense you do talk!
Perhaps the mystery is a little too plain.
Good heavens! Who ever heard of such an idea?
A little too self-evident.
Oh, Dupin, you will be the death of me yet!
Oh, no, nothing of that nature.
The fact is, the business is very simple indeed, and I make no doubt that we can manage it sufficiently well ourselves. But then I thought Dupin would like to hear the details of it, because it is so excessively odd.
And what, after all, is the matter on hand?
Why, I will tell you. I will tell you in a few words. But before I begin, let me caution you that this is an affair demanding the greatest secrecy, and that I should most probably lose the position I now hold were it known that I confided it to anyone.
Proceed. Well then, I have received personal information from a very high quarter that a certain document of the last importance has been purloined from the royal apartments. The individual who purloined it is known. This beyond a doubt. He was seen to take it. It is known also that it still remains in his possession. How is this known? It is clearly inferred from the nature of the document, and from the non-appearance of certain results which would at once arise from its passing out of the robber's possession.
Visitor, be a little more explicit.
Well, I may venture so far as to say that the paper gives its holder a certain power in a certain quarter where such power is immensely valuable.
Still, I do not quite understand.
No? Well, the disclosure of the document to a third person who shall be nameless would bring in question the honour of a personage of most exalted station, and this fact gives the holder of the document an ascendancy over the illustrious personage whose honour and peace are so jeopardised. But this ascendancy would depend upon the robber's knowledge of the loser's knowledge of the robber. Who would dare? The thief is the Minister D, who dares all things, those unbecoming as well as those becoming a man. The method of the theft was not less ingenious than bold. The document in question, a letter to be frank, had been received by the personage robbed while alone in the royal boudoir. During its perusal, she was suddenly interrupted by the entrance of the other exalted personage, from whom especially it was her wish to conceal it. After a hurried and vain endeavour to thrust it in a drawer, she was forced to place it, open as it was, upon a table. At this juncture enters the Minister D. His lynx eye immediately perceives the paper, recognises the handwriting, observes the confusion of the personage addressed, and fathoms her secret. After some business transactions, he produces a letter somewhat similar to the one in question, opens it, pretends to read it, and then places it in close juxtaposition to the other. At length, in taking leave, he takes also from the table the letter to which he had no claim. Its rightful owner saw, but of course dared not call attention to the act in the presence of the third personage who stood at her elbow. The minister decamped, leaving his own letter, one of no importance, upon the table.
Here, then you have precisely what you demand to make the ascendancy complete. The robber's knowledge of the loser's knowledge of the robber.
Yes, and the power thus attained has, for some months past, been wielded for political purposes to a very dangerous extent. In fine, driven to despair, she has committed the matter to me. Than whom no more sagacious agent could, I suppose, be desired or even imagined. You flatter me, but it is possible that some such opinion may have been entertained.
It is clear that the letter is still in possession of the minister, since it is this possession, and not any employment of the letter, which bestows the power. With the employment, the power departs.
True. And upon this conviction I proceeded. My first care was to make thorough search of the minister's hotel, and here my chief embarrassment lay in the necessity of searching without his knowledge. Beyond all things, I have been warned of the danger which would result from giving him reason to suspect our design.
Visitor, but you are quite au fait in these investigations. The Parisian police have done this thing often before.
Oh, yes, and for this reason I did not despair. The habits of the minister gave me, too, a great advantage. He is frequently absent from home all night. His servants are readily made drunk. I have keys, as you know, with which I can open any chamber or cabinet in Paris. For 3 months a night has not passed, during the greater part of which I have not been engaged personally in ransacking the D Hotel. My honour is interested, and to mention a great secret, the reward is enormous. So I did not abandon the search until I had become fully satisfied that the thief is a more astute man than myself.
But is it not possible that although the letter may be in possession of the minister, he may have concealed it elsewhere than upon his own premises?
That is barely possible. The present peculiar condition of affairs at court would render the instant availability of the document, its susceptibility of being produced at a moment's notice, a point of nearly equal importance with its possession.
Its susceptibility of being produced?
That is to say, of being destroyed.
True. The paper is clearly then upon the premises, As for its being upon the person of the minister, we may consider that as out of the question.
Entirely. He has been twice waylaid, as if by footpads, and his person rigorously searched under my own inspection.
You might have spared yourself this trouble. D, I presume, is not altogether a fool, and if not, must have anticipated these waylayings as a matter of course.
Not altogether a fool, but then he's a poet, which I take to be only one remove from a fool.
True, although I have been guilty of certain doggerel myself.
Suppose you detail the particulars of your search.
Why, the fact is, we took our time, and we searched everywhere. I took the entire building, room by room, devoting the nights of a whole week to each. We opened every possible drawer. Any man is a dolt who permits a secret drawer to escape him in a search of this kind. The thing is so plain. There is a certain amount of bulk, of space, to be accounted for in every cabinet. Then we have accurate rules. The 50th part of a line could not escape us. After the cabinets, we took the chairs. The cushions we probed with fine, long needles. From the tables, we removed the tops. Why so? Sometimes the top of a table is removed, then the leg is excavated, the article deposited within the cavity, and the top replaced. The bottoms and tops of bedposts are employed in the same way. But could not the cavity be detected by sounding? By no means, if, when the article is deposited, a sufficient wadding of cotton be placed around it. Besides, in our case, we were obliged to proceed without noise.
Visitor, but you could not have taken to pieces all articles of furniture? A letter may be compressed into a thin spiral roll, and in this form it might be inserted into the rung of a chair, for example. You did not take to pieces all the chairs?
Certainly not, but we did better. We examined the rungs of every chair in the hotel, and indeed the jointings of every description of furniture, by the aid of a most powerful microscope. Had there been any traces of recent disturbance, we should not have failed to detect it instantly. A single grain of gimlet dust, for example, would have been as obvious as an apple. I presume you looked to the mirrors, and you probed the beds and the bedclothes, as well as the curtains and carpets? That, of course. And when we had absolutely completed every particle of the furniture in this way, then we examined the house itself. We divided its entire surface into compartments, which we numbered so that none might be missed. Then we scrutinized each individual square inch throughout the premises, including the two houses immediately adjoining. The two houses adjoining? You must have had a great deal of trouble. We had, but the reward offered is prodigious.
You include the grounds about the houses?
All the grounds are paved with brick. We examined the moss between the bricks and found it undisturbed. You looked among D's papers, of course, and into the books of the library? Certainly. We opened every package and parcel. We not only opened every book, but we turned over every leaf in each volume. We also measured the thickness of every book cover with the most accurate admeasurement. Some 5 or 6 volumes just from the hands of the binder we carefully probed longitudinally with the needles.
Visitor, you explored the floors beneath the carpets. Prefect,
Beyond doubt. We removed every carpet and examined the boards with the microscope.
and the paper on the walls.
Yes,
You looked into the cellars?
we did.
Then you have been making a miscalculation, and the letter is not upon the premises, as you suppose.
I fear you are right there.
And now,
Dupin, what would you advise me to do?
To make a thorough research of the premises.
That is absolutely needless. I am not more sure that I breathe than I am that the letter is not at the hotel.
I have no better advice to give you.
you have, of course, an accurate description of the letter?
Oh, yes.
And here the prefect, producing a memorandum book, proceeded to read aloud a minute account of the internal and especially of the external appearance of the missing document. Soon after finishing the perusal of this description, he took his departure, more entirely depressed in spirits than I had ever known the good gentleman before. In about a month afterwards, he paid us another visit, and found us occupied very nearly as before. He took a pipe and a chair, and entered into some ordinary conversation. At length I said,
Well, but, gee, what of the Purloined letter? I presume you have at last made up your mind that there is no such thing as overreaching the minister?
Confound him, say I. Yes, I made the re-examination, however, as Dupin suggested, but it was all labour lost, as I knew it would be.
How much was the reward offered, did you say?
Why, very great deal. A very liberal reward. I don't like to say how much precisely, but one thing I will say, that I wouldn't mind giving my individual cheque for 50,000 francs to anyone who could obtain me that letter. The fact is, it is becoming of more and more importance every day, and the reward has been lately doubled.
Why, yes. I really think, G, you have not exerted yourself to the utmost in this matter. You might do a little more, I think, eh?
How? In what way?
Why, you might employ counsel in the matter, eh? Do you remember the story they tell of Abernethy? A certain rich miser conceived the design of sponging upon this Abernethy for a medical opinion, insinuating his case to the physician as that of an imaginary individual. We will suppose, said the miser, that his symptoms are of such and such. Now, doctor, what would you have directed him to take? Take, said Abernethy. Why, take advice, to be sure.
But I am perfectly willing to take advice and to pay for it. I would really give 50,000 francs to anyone who would aid me in the matter.
In that case, you may as well fill me up a cheque for the amount mentioned. When you have signed it, I will hand you the letter.
But I am perfectly willing to take advice and to pay for it. I would really give 50,000 francs to anyone who would aid me in the matter.
In that case, you may as well fill me up a cheque for the amount mentioned. When you have signed it, I will hand you the letter.
I was astounded. The prefect appeared absolutely thunder-stricken. For some minutes he remained speechless and motionless, looking incredulously at my friend with open mouth. Then, apparently recovering himself in some measure, he seized a pen, and after several pauses and vacant stares, finally filled up and signed a cheque for 50,000 francs, and handed it across the table to Dupin. The latter examined it carefully, and deposited it in his pocket-book. Then, unlocking an escritoire, took thence a letter, and gave it to the prefect. This functionary grasped it in a perfect agony of joy, opened it with a trembling hand, cast a rapid glance at its contents, and then, scrambling and struggling to the door, rushed at length unceremoniously from the room and from the house, without having uttered a syllable. When he had gone, my friend entered into some explanations.
The Parisian police are exceedingly able in their way. They are persevering, ingenious, cunning, and thoroughly versed in the knowledge which their duties seem chiefly to demand. Thus, when G detailed to us his mode of searching Mrs. L.D., I felt entire confidence in his having made a satisfactory. So his labours extended,
So far as his ended, yes. The measures adopted were not only the best of their kind, but carried out to absolute perfection. Had the letter been deposited within the range of their search, these fellows would be founded. I knew the minister as both mathematician, and my measures were adapted to his capacity. He could not have failed to anticipate the secret investigations of his premises. I saw, in fine, that he would be driven, as a matter of course, to simplicity. Yes, I remember your suggestion that this mystery troubled the Prefect so much on account of its being so very self-evident.
Dupin. The Prefect never once thought it probable or possible that the minister had deposited the letter immediately beneath the whole world by way of best preventing any portion of that world from perceiving it. But the more I reflected upon the daring ingenuity of D, the more satisfied I became that to conceal this letter, the minister had resorted to the comprehensive and sagacious expedient of not attempting to conceal it at all. Full of these ideas, I prepared myself with a pair of green spectacles and called one fine morning, quite by accident, at the ministerial hotel, under cover of which I cautiously and thoroughly surveyed the whole apartment. And did you find it? Yes. The measures adopted were not only the best of their kind, but carried out to absolute perfection. Had the letter been deposited within the range of their search, these fellows would, beyond a question, have found it. I knew the minister as both mathematician and poet, and my measures were adapted to his capacity. He could not have failed to anticipate the secret investigations of his premises. I saw, in fine, that he would be driven, as a matter of course, to simplicity. But it was radically different from the description the Prefect read.
The roughness of these differences, which was excessive. The dirt, the soiled and torn condition of the paper, true methodical habits of D. Things, together with the hyper-obtrusive situation of this document of every visitor. These things were strongly corroborative of suspicion. I visit as long as possible. In scrutinizing the edges, observed them to be more chafed than seemed necessary. It was clear to me that the letter had been turned, as a glove, inside out, erected and resealed. I bade the minister good morning, little snuff box upon the table. For it? Yes. The measures adopted were not. The neck called for the snuff box. In conversation, a loud report, as if of a pistol, was heard beneath the windows of the hotel, and was succeeded by a series of terrified screams and the shoutings of a terrified mob. D rushed to a casement, threw it open, and looked out. In the meantime, I stepped to the card rack, took the letter, put it in my pocket, and replaced it by a facsimile. The disturbance in the street had been occasioned by the frantic behaviour of a man with a musket. A man in my own pay.
But what purpose had you in replacing the letter by a facsimile? Would it not have been better, at the first visit, to have seized it openly and departed?
D is a desperate man.
and a man of nerve. Had I made the wild attempt you suggest, I might never have left the ministerial presence alive. But I had an object apart from these considerations. You know my political prepossessions. In this matter, I act as a partisan of the lady concerned. For 18 months, the minister has had her in his power. She has now him in hers. I confess, however, that I should like very well to know the precise character of his thoughts when reduced to opening the letter which I left for him in the card rack.
How? And did you put anything particular in it?
Why, it did not seem altogether right to leave the interior blank. That would have been insulting. As I knew he would feel some curiosity in regard to the identity of the person who had outwitted him, I thought it a pity not to give him a clue. He is well acquainted with my handwriting. And I just copied into the middle of the blank sheet the words "Un des sang si funeste, si on est digne d'attrait, et digne de tieste." They are to be found in Crébillon's Attrait.